Welcome to Ask the Hiring Manager. Welcome to another episode of Ask the Hiring Manager, everyone. Today we have Brian Vaccaro and Bill Ash with us from St. Louis Classical Guitar. Brian is Executive Director of St. Louis Classical Guitar, also known as SLCG, and Bill is the former Executive Director of the organization and current board member. St. Louis Classical Guitar, previously known as the St. Louis Classical Guitar Society, is a nonprofit arts agency whose mission is to promote positive impact through classical guitar performance and education. It is the third oldest organization in the nation centered around classical guitar and actively serves the St. Louis community through innovative and high-quality programming. And this year, 2024, actually marks SLCG's 60th anniversary. So happy anniversary to you guys
Thank you very
with
much.
the St. Louis Classical Guitar. And it's great having you both here. So I'll kind of jump right in. Bill, in what way were you involved with St. Louis Classical Guitar Society before its transition? And what inspired the shift from St. Louis Classical Guitar Society to SLCG?
Well, thanks, Leslie. It's great to be here. Thanks for having us on this podcast. And I'll try to give just a quick overview of where the organization came from. We used to be a little club. It was called a Guitar Guild, and it was formed in 1963 in honor of a guitar teacher here in St. Louis, George C. Crick. And as you can imagine, it was just local guitarists would come together and play together and just talk about guitar stuff. We started wanting to get more ambitious at that point. So we thought we'd change the name at that point to try to be more inclusive. And and I was part of the new board of directors, and we came up with changing the name to St. Louis Classical Guitar Society. Society being more inclusive and letting people know that you don't have to be a guitar player to join our group. We wanted to be more than just a little club, and we'd like to be having concerts in the community and letting more people know about us and to grow. So that was a way of trying to be more inclusive. So at that time, my wife Kathy and I were the administrators, and I was the president. You know, we didn't really have a formal board of directors, but we did on paper. But I was the president and executive director. So my wife Kathy and I together, we started this organization, and we sort of taught ourselves how to do it. We started having concerts and bringing in people who have great renown and trying to find a way to get more people to come. So we started learning more about publicity, how to grow an audience. And then we always had master classes for the people who did play guitar. And guitar societies typically do that. And then maybe that's all they do. They sort of still function like little clubs, but they do sponsor concerts. So we have a network throughout the country of small organizations called guitar societies. And there may be like 75 of them throughout the country, actually. Kathy and I saw the value of having a larger organization that was sustainable and could have more of an impact in the community. And so we tried really hard to get more concert attendance. And through concert attendance, we got more people aware of what we're doing. We got more donors. We sort of grew that way. We found other sources of grants. So as we got more donors and had more people coming, we could ask for more money from places. So we actually got to the point where we were getting money from the National Endowment for the Arts. It was like $10,000. So I was at the helm of this for like 37 years. I finally retired from it in 2017. But at that point, we were getting larger grants, and a major thing that happened on my watch was that we had the Michael Brown shooting here in St. Louis. When that happened, I was thinking, wow, what can we do to help this fractured community in Ferguson? And I thought, well, we have guitar programs, we have guitars, we can give guitars to schools. What if we had actual in-school programs?
Hmm.
So I made a last-minute appeal to the Augustine Foundation in St. Louis, saying, "Would you give us $20,000 so we could do 2 schools and get a pilot program going in Ferguson for these kids?" And they came back. They said yes. So that enabled us to actually support that community through our educational outreach. And I ended up calling it Guitar Horizons because it raises the kids' horizons. We'll get more into this in a minute, but this allowed us to grow because we were attracting more donors, more people saw the value of what we were doing, and we were able to grow and grow the program. So I know we're going to talk more about that, but that's sort of a brief history of my involvement up to the point where uh, we had some transitions and Brian comes into the picture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very interesting. And I'm assuming that you both have a background too, obviously a connection to music. I'm curious, tell me a little bit more about your musical background, how you got into music, both of you.
Should I go?
Um,
Yeah, Brian, go ahead.
you want to start? Yeah. Just from
Tag
a
team.
personal standpoint, um, yeah, I started with, I gravitated toward guitar immediately, age 13. My parents at the time said, and this was the 80s. So I was an 80s kid, right? So this was the time of guitar pyrotechnics and Eddie Van Halen and all of this. And I was very drawn to that. And my parents, being my parents, said, that's all good and well, but you're going to actually study this properly. If this is something we're going to like invest in you doing, my uncle happened to be a pro player and pro teacher and a published author with Mel Bay Publications.
Oh, wow, great.
Um, and if listeners are not familiar, that's a sort of a renowned publisher of more specifically guitar education material. Mel Bay book when is sort of like the was at one point the guitar Bible for all beginning guitar students.
Mm.
Anyway, so he wrote for them. So I took lessons from age 13 until I went to college from my uncle. And that started a whole series of events with me when I finally became old enough to go to college. I was looking at like, well, what am I going to do in college? What is that? What is the only thing that really speaks to me? It's music. Really, that's the only thing I'm involved in that I feel this strongly about. So I went to Webster University and majored in jazz studies there. So I was a jazz studies major with an emphasis in commercial music. Got a degree there and fell into teaching at that point too. So that's kind of how I made ends meet, is by teaching private guitar lessons myself, starting at about age 19, 20. This was back in 1994, and have been involved in education ever since, specifically guitar education, but more broadly music education. Then that sort of mushroomed into this whole other thing where by the end of my college career, I was teaching college myself. I was teaching at various local colleges in an adjunct capacity. Took a couple of years off, finally went back and got my master's degree so I could get that credential so I could expand. My plan at the time was to expand into more college teaching because that's where I felt like I was headed.
Sure.
Meanwhile, while I was doing all of that, what I was doing to make ends meet in addition to teaching was managing lesson programs, doing music performance production, performing myself, doing programs where I was managing hundreds of students, placing them with the appropriate teachers, writing curriculum, doing things that, all I didn't realize it at the time were all leading to this job that I'm in now.
Hmm.
And that sort of was my path. Curiously enough, I am not primarily a classical guitarist. So we think of, St. Louis Classical Guitar. Well, I must, I'm the executive director of this organization. I must be a classical guitarist myself. Well, no, I dabble a little bit in classical guitar, but primarily I'm a jazz guitarist. That's really, I mean, we can get into this part of it later. That is not the scope of the job, as being a performer. Though musically, that's sort of been my journey. And then this took me in all kinds of other directions. At one point, I was just prior to coming to St. Louis Classical Guitar, I was teaching at a performing arts high school.
Oh.
Running guitar programs and jazz programs there. And in a nutshell, that's been my musical journey.
Nice. I love it. I love it. And how about you, Bill?
My story is completely off the wall. I wasn't in music at all. I went through college as an economics major. I was 26 when I started classical guitar, and I found out about it late, but the bug bit me. I thought, holy smokes, this is fantastic. I love it, and I was just putting off growing up. Really, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was afraid I'd have to be stuck in a job I hated, so I just stayed in school. I was just a professional student, but this gave me a focus and a mission in life, I guess. And it sort of saved me. And so I ended up going to music school. I went to the St. Louis Conservatory of Music. While I was doing that, that was just prior to taking on the reins as the Guitar Society president. So I came to it late, and I came to it from a very different background. So I have an economics background, and actually I was in philosophy for a while as well. So,
Oh, wow, very fascinating. And I kind of know how that goes because I started out an undergrad as a piano performance major, and then I switched. I had a scholarship, and then I switched to kind of opposite of you. I switched to economics in case I wanted a real job, but I still keep up in play. So it's not uncommon, I feel like, for musicians or people with musical backgrounds to kind of touch in different areas or yeah, but that is interesting. You kind of went the reversal way. Why do you all feel that music, including classical music, is important for youth and people in general?
I guess I can go first. I would answer that. I would first answer that question. There's a lot of potential answers to that, but I would just say, imagine existing in a world where music didn't exist.
Oh gosh.
Right? And just the intrinsic importance of that in whatever facet of life you're in. If that weren't there, just imagine sort of how much more mundane life would be, I mean, that's the initial thing that comes to mind. Then you can dig into all of the benefits that music has, so if you're playing in an ensemble, for example, then you get teamwork skills. Then you get the idea of how to negotiate things with other people. And you don't even realize you're doing it. You're doing it in a musical way. You're playing your role, which is then you get the scope of like, well, I'm playing a part of something much larger than myself. These are all life skills, right?
Yes.
You've got the idea of focus and discipline that comes with learning an instrument, and that sort of lights up parts of your brain that otherwise don't get lit up if you're not participating in it. Speaking of which, there's all of the correlation that everybody's ever heard. Math skills, science skills, all of these things, academic skills get heightened with students that are involved in music. It lights up parts of your brain that enable you to think differently about what you're doing. I mean, these are I could go on for a half an hour about all of the different benefits you get from participating in music, aside from just the emotional benefit. It might just be that you might not end up pursuing music professionally. In fact, most people don't. right? But if it's something that you can go to as a Zen activity, something that like this is a psychological and emotional reset for me, you know, to sort of put everything aside for just a moment and focus on playing this piece, you know, or doing something as perfectly as I can. There's just such value in all of that. Aside from the fact that music is around us all the time, and if it exists, boy, I'd hate to imagine what that would be like.
I find that I never thought about that. You know, people or the topic of how music is important comes up, why it's beneficial. But I've never heard someone phrase like imagine a world without music. And so that is an interesting way to think about it. It's just part of our life. I mean, it brings so many emotions, feelings. Like you said, there's obviously, you know, intellectual and other benefits that come from even just listening to music, let alone being a musician, discipline, those things you talk about. But yeah, imagine a world without music. That sounds like a song, kind of.
Right. There might be a song. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brian, you said it so well.
Yes.
And it's part of being a fully developed person, you know, a fully engaged person in the world to understand the different musical forms. So I think classical music is this another aspect that young people especially will benefit from learning about, because they might not get it in just normal cultural growing up, you know. So we're sort of trying to give them another dimension that help them personally and help them grow into complete people, you know, and complete, happy, well-functioning people, you know. So and also the fact of actually engaging in making music is important, more so than just being exposed to music, you know. So just and Brian brought out many of the beautiful things about playing in a group, learning in a group situation. There's all these wonderful benefits that help you grow, and things that you wouldn't get just in a normal classroom setting. So the other thing is we're reaching kids in the schools that might not be in band or orchestra, which are great programs. But there's all the kids outside after school who aren't participating, and those are our kids. Those are the kids that we can pick up in guitar programs, and many of our after-school programs have that benefit of giving them something very productive to do after classes are over, in that critical period between 3 and 5 in the afternoon. Although we love being in the school day as part of the curriculum as well.
Absolutely.
Because there's more accountability there, and they actually I think do better because it's more regular, and the expectations can be set in the school day. So
yes.
Anyway, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that one. Because
yeah, of course. I mean, there's so many benefits. You both hit on some things that made me think about skills that apply even in the corporate and or professional world. As Brian mentioned, you know, being able to negotiate, being collaborative. You know, there's no doubt from my musical background with the piano performance on my end, but any type of musical performance, being able to be calm under pressure, you know, we all know that, or if they're facing challenges, bouncing back quickly, because no one's perfect, everyone can make a mistake, but it's about, you know, brushing yourself, getting back up. And as a performer, you just have to keep going. You know, you can't let it, if you're a good performer, you can't let things set you back. So all of those things that are very important when you're presenting, when you're front facing to either an organization in a role. If you're more than just behind the desk, there are several things when you're dealing with people and presentation being forward facing that performance really lends to. So yeah, I think that's great. And music, you know, the art of music. So great.
Being comfortable doing something in front of an audience, in front of other people.
Yes.
You know, it's a presentation, you know, or even in a classroom presentation, but you get in the corporate world, and if you have that kind of skill, you'll do much better if you're comfortable talking to a group. you know,
Absolutely.
Right.
music is a great way to learn how to be comfortable on stage, I think.
It is because you either you kind of thrown into it, you're kind of forced to be. So yes, yes,
Yeah.
no, that's a great skill. I'm
Yeah.
curious because you all have teaching artists within your organization. What is the role of teaching artists, and what do they do? Why are they important? Either of you can jump into that one.
Sure. Well, teaching artists within the context of St. Louis classical guitar are the ones that we deploy to administer the Guitar Horizons program that Bill spoke of previously. And those are the ones that go into the area schools and community centers, of which, you know, we go to upwards of 20 some odd schools at this point. So it started with 2, now we're at roughly 20.
Oh, great.
And they go and teach our Guitar Horizons program. They get well versed in the curriculum that we are that we use for that program. So they get training in that, and then they go to the various schools based on their schedule, our schedule. That all fits together like a jigsaw puzzle. So that's a whole process. Takes a couple months to put together for an academic year. How to deploy and when to deploy the different teaching artists and how it all fits together. As Bill also mentioned, we've got before school programs, after school programs, and then some that happen during the curricular day. And all of that is part of that big jigsaw puzzle that, you know, I was talking about. But their main function is to go in and teach with the assistance of the music teacher that is there at the school. So we set it up so our curriculum works as like a team teaching situation where our teaching artists do the bulk of the instruction and the direction for the students, and the teacher on the ground there in the school is there to kind of assist and kind of be the roaming sort of eyes and ears on the students that are there and kind of help as help is needed, so that our teaching artists can kind of keep rolling with the instruction and the direction. What our curriculum enables our teaching artists to do is to conduct guitar instruction in a group setting. So imagine like a choir, but with guitars rather than voices. And if a student has had some previous guitar experience, then that student can get some more complicated parts to play, whereas sort of the students that are brand new to the guitar can get a very entry level, beginner level part to play within the ensemble. It just enables students to be able to play music right from the get-go, which in my opinion is a very encouraging thing. You know, rather than building all these skills, then you earn the right to be able to play music. No, this is more like we're playing music right from the beginning, no matter how complicated or how entry level it is. It's a good curriculum that sort of enables us to do that and approach it in the way that students are playing together.
I like that, kind of throwing them in the mix, so to say, getting right to it, and then kind of working things through, and the collaborative aspect, and
And that speaks to those negotiation skills that we were talking about, and like being part of something bigger and seeing the end result as something bigger than yourself. You know, all of these life skills that we were previously talking about.
Absolutely. Which is so important. I'm
Mhm.
curious, just to jump ship a little bit, what is the importance and function of SLCG's board of directors? Bill, I know you're on the board, if you want to jump in on that one.
Yeah.
Well, it's similar to all nonprofits in that it sets policies, and we try to make sure that all the programs are supportive of the mission of the organization. So it helps keep us focused. And besides policies, the board is ultimately responsible for the financial stability of the organization. So we approve the annual budget, and Brian brings the budget to us through the finance committee. And then once the finance committee approves of it, then it goes to the full board. So fundraising can be one of the important aspects of the board service. We all make a minimal contribution or more than minimal every year. And we go out and help support finding more donors to make the budget work. So I guess it's financial, the financial underpinnings and the mission-focused programming and the policies that help that to happen. So I think all those are really important. The big picture of the board represents the community. And so we have to be responsible to the community through the board. And the board should be very transparent about what we're doing. And we invite people from the community to join our board. And so it's very, very important. And it's slightly different than the for-profit world, I guess. But not too much, but our board members are not paid. I'll
Sure.
make that clear. So I'm on the board now. I'm trying to allow new leadership to grow. So I don't have an officer role, but I try to provide input and direction since I've been studying how boards operate for many years, and I think it's important that we operate in a very, very accountable way. So, and we
Yes.
do, that.
Absolutely. And you both are officially the first guests that I've interviewed from a nonprofit. So, in addition to discussing the hiring process, I also want to gain the employee search and hiring perspective from the nonprofit lens, which I'm sure could vary in several ways from how a for-profit company might go about finding corporate employees. With that said, Bill, when you and your board were in the search for a qualified individual to fill the executive director position, how did you go about seeking out prospective candidates?
Well, we have a number of people on the board who are familiar with these kinds of processes from their for-profit world. So a lot of what we did was following standard best practice. So we put out feelers. We put out something on our own website that we were accepting applications for the position. We sent it to a local nonprofit board resource. They're a consulting firm that has a message board for nonprofits to post job openings, the Rome Group locally. We also reached out to guitar instructors at major universities saying we had a position open. Perhaps they had a new graduate who was interested in the administrative side of the guitar world, so and so we let it be known to our mailing list, and we spread it pretty widely, nationwide as well. We notified the Guitar Foundation of America that we had a position opening and we're going to be searching. So we had a deadline, so we put the word out. We had a description of the organization, what the position was, what the expectations were, and we ended up getting about 18 resumes submitted that were seriously submitted, besides the inquiries we got. And we had a search committee which consisted of four of the board members, and they were able to rule out many of those applications because the position is really quite complex. It requires a lot of complex skills, really, which we can get into. But we came down to, I think, six candidates who all got a Zoom interview of, I think it was half an hour each. So we did it on Zoom. I was involved. I was involved as being part of the Zoom. I could ask questions, but I was not a voting member. At the time, I was the interim executive director because we had a transition need. And so I came back on for, I think, like 2.5 months. And I said I had already retired, but they lured me back in because of the need. And I said, okay, but let's keep this moving quickly, and let's don't wait till the end of the fiscal year. So everything had to happen very quickly, but it was a very professional outreach and done very much similar, I think, to most corporations should do. So we had all the interviews, and Brian was one of the interviewees. And we had a scoring system for a series of questions. Everyone was scored. And at the end of the 6 interviews, the committee met to look at the total of the scores, and actually Brian was our highest scoring candidate. He came out as our first choice. And fortunately, he he said yes to our offer. So I can get into more detail if you want, but it was a hiring process very similar, I think, to what should be done in good business practice.
That's great. No, I love that, you had the different outlets, like you mentioned, you put it on the, what was that website that you mentioned? The
Rome Group,
Yeah,
ROME, the Rome Group.
and it's a Rome Group, a nonprofit, kind of a website that basically posts nonprofit positions.
Yes, more than just the arts, I believe.
Yes,
I'm not sure about that, but I mean, the arts is a good subset of the
the
nonprofit world,
nonprofit
social
sector.
service world. And
Well, is a overall, it's a consulting firm for nonprofits.
Okay.
And that's just one of the services that they do for nonprofits is they have a job posting board where that seems to be the go-to place for. In fact, that's where I saw this officially listed.
Yes. Yeah, I was just going to ask, how did you find out about that position? So it was on the Rome Group website.
Well, yeah, prior to that, I had heard rumblings, because of being connected to the music and guitar community.
Sure.
And knowing somebody that was part of the outgoing team and just sort of like keeping an eye on that situation. And it seemed like it was about to happen, then I wasn't going to make any sort of official application to that until I saw it listed officially. And, I was just keeping my eyes peeled to that Rome Group job board. And lo and behold, there it was. So I threw my hat in the ring thinking, well, this isn't going to be anything.
Guess you were wrong.
Yeah. And and then that led to a quick phone interview with one of the board members that was on the hiring committee, and which led to a Zoom interview. Because this is still at the tail end of the pandemic, and so Zoom was the thing. And and that apparently went very well. And here I am. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Bill, I'm curious, what were you and your committee? I'm assuming it seems like there was a joint process. You can let me know that. Feel free to speak to kind of the joint efforts and then what you and your committee were looking for in an executive director that obviously Brian.
Yeah. I mean, we had questions like, tell us about a significant team project that you worked on and what was your role? What challenges did you face? I'm just reading a couple of these. How did you address the challenges? Or tell us about a time when you're leading a group that was not an agreement about a single approach. How did you handle it? It's sort of like, how do you get along in a group atmosphere in a larger organization, where you might be on a team member trying to accomplish something. And I ended up throwing some questions at Brian at the very end, which are just like, how good are you with technology? I mean, are you familiar with QuickBooks, accounting programs or Facebook? Do you use social media? How are you on Word? Can you do the kinds of things that more likely you'll be doing, which is working with a lot of tech issues? And Brian showed that he had a lot of awareness and experience with those sorts of things. But really, what we should have been looking for, I mean, from the very beginning, was someone with both a vision and also an ability to managerially get things done. This kind of position is really one of the more challenging positions you can find in the business world, really, because it's almost like being an entrepreneur with your own business, trying to make sure it works, trying to make sure you've got enough money to make your vision come to pass. What we have is an art form rather than a product, a tangible product. But we have an art form that most people don't know about. They don't realize the value of what it is that we're offering until we can give them more information about it, or educate them more about why they want us, why they need us, you know. And so that requires some ability to talk effectively about why art matters. Why does our art matter? Why does our educational programs matter for the kids? Why should you support this organization? Well, because we're reaching these kids with these wonderful programs, and we're presenting these wonderful concerts which show the flowering of the guitar art. I mean, these phenomenal virtuosos often attract the community members in the first place.
Yes.
Once we're there, we can educate them about the other things we do under the surface, which is help these kids learn how to play guitar and have this wonderful experience. So there's that big visionary aspect to it, plus being willing to get into the weeds and get things done, follow through, being able to reach other people in our network with other organizations, to convince them to collaborate with us in various ways. And work with our board and not help the board find its moorings as well.
What was it about, I guess, the former candidate that now has the role that kind of stuck out to you?
He had all these qualities that we're looking for, and he seemed to be the one who was not only experienced, but also wanted the challenge of putting all these roles together that he had done maybe separately here and there and there.
Yeah.
You know, and he's mentioned that before. And I think that is one of the beauties of the role, is you get to do a lot of different things. And he seemed like he wanted to do a lot of different things. So all in all, he just showed that he had all the qualities that we were looking for, really. So we're very happy to have him, and continue to be happy to have him.
Good job, Brian.
Well,
Yeah, it's like a
honored and
rah, your cheerleaders. Yes.
Yeah.
That's great. No, but honestly, thanks for speaking to that, Bill. And it's important. And one thing that you both hit on, and that you just did, Bill, was bringing together for Brian different aspects that he's done in some capacity before the role that kind of nicely was packaged all together, which I'm assuming probably was attractive to you, Brian, so that you could use these different skills and that you had kind of combine them into one.
Right. That's super appealing to me because, you know, the way I sort of think about St. Louis classical guitar is that we exist, and this is actually part of our mission statement in a way. And then it's like we've got these pull-up banners that actually say this too. We kind of exist in three segments, and being performance, education, and community engagement. And I was doing things in all of those sectors, but it always seemed like I was cobbling together 3 or 4 jobs, you know, professionally speaking, to kind of get my feet wet in all of those areas. And this was like, okay, so this is a place where I can come and do this all in one spot. Yeah, sign me up, you know, because I had been looking for sort of a one-stop shop to kind of utilize all those skills.
Interesting.
And so this one just became, you know, the one where I could apply all of those things that I had been previously doing.
That's great. And maybe that's also encouraging for other people that are either musicians like yourself that have different types of things they've done in different areas, but by working in a role or applying to a nonprofit where they can do those different skills in one that would be attractive, and maybe other areas of not just musicians, but other nonprofits where maybe people say, okay, I do this, I do that, and finding it all combined in one role could be a
Yeah.
benefit, very much so.
I think the commonality that I've sort of learned about nonprofits is that if you're working for one, you're going to ultimately be wearing a lot of different hats. And you got to be comfortable with that, and that's probably true. And I know it's true in the corporate world as well, but maybe there's a little bit more of like you're staying in your lane isms about the corporate world, whereas, funding is such in the nonprofit world that it's all hands on deck. And then the more you can do and the more well-versed you are in all kinds of different areas, the better you're going to be at it. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's what I would advise based on my 2.5 year tenure doing this.
Yeah.
Be comfortable wearing a lot of different hats, and it's going to be beneficial to you.
Absolutely. Totally agree with that. Absolutely agree with that. And this question can be for either of you, as to my understanding, you've both done hiring. What would you say are some pros or cons when looking at a resume?
I can start, Bill, if
Sure.
Go ahead.
I guess I look for exactly what I just said, how well rounded and well versed a person is, how many different skills does that person have that I can tap into. I like to think kind of out of the box and think about like, yeah, we're hiring for a certain role, but can this person bring more to it than that in terms of a skill set, or how prone is this individual going to be to pitch different ideas to me about how to grow the program, or job function, or whatever it is that he or she is involved in. I look primarily for that, a diversity of skill set. I mean, to me, that's very important. That's very important for myself to kind of cultivate. So, I find that important when I'm thinking about hiring somebody else. And I've done that, in this context, I hire teaching artists. That's primarily what I do, but I've had a good deal of experience in my previous lives where I've had to hire people for this, that, the other thing. And I always appreciate somebody that's going to bring more to the role than what's sort of advertised for. And if I can see that in a resume, like just the breadth of experience in lots of different areas, no matter how sort of unrelated it might seem, I will sort of latch onto that.
Sure. Absolutely. Interesting. Okay. Well, that's super helpful. So that diversity of skill, those things that, it's kind of been a recurring theme that we've been talking about, which I think it's good for viewers to know too, especially those interested in a nonprofit in general, no matter what area. Like you said, putting hands on deck, having a diversity of skills, being very broad, wearing different hats. I think it's super, super key and key advice. What other advice would either of you give to those who have interest in applying to or working for a nonprofit organization?
Maybe I'll speak a little bit to that. Well, first of all, I think they should look at the nonprofit world as a great opportunity if they have something that they're passionate about in terms of social justice or helping other people, or a particular art form, anything that's a little bit out of the ordinary that might not be so open to you or valued by those who hire you in a traditional corporation, which is really money focused. There's so many opportunities to do good in the world that we're really not aware of it until we just kind of look on that side of the line. I remember when I went through college, I took some business courses, and the idea of working for a nonprofit was never even brought up.
Mm.
And I thought the only way to work in the business world was to work in a for-profit company. There are great opportunities in the nonprofits that you should look at, and they pay real salaries, you know. And as we mentioned before, Leslie, I mean, some people might think it's just if you have to be a volunteer if you're going to work in a nonprofit world. Well, no, there are legitimate jobs there which pay real salaries. Okay. But often there's more latitude in what they do, sort of like for us. Uh, I mean, you can still find a specific role if you're an accountant, great, you know, and you're comfortable just being in that lane. You still work for a nonprofit, they may need you, or publicity director. But there are lots of positions which are, like Brian said, more open-ended, and that you might be working with a team and they value your input, even though your job description is A. If you suggest to someone working on your team and they're working in a different area of another solution, you might not have to feel like they're going to feel like they're trying to take over your job, or you should, you know, keep quiet and stay in your lane so that we all get along. You know, I think
Sure.
there might be more collaboration, I think, across job descriptions, I guess is what I'm saying. And you might find it a very interesting and creative environment to work in. So if you're a creative type person, you should at least look at positions in the nonprofit world, I think.
I think that's great advice. Absolutely. If you all were to hire for another role for St. Louis Classical Guitar, what would that role be?
Um, I would say director of education.
Sure.
Um,
I think Bill backs that.
down the road, budget sort of allowing, that would be the very next thing. A director of education, where it's like anything education related, you know who the point person is.
Hmm.
And we're not in that situation right now just because of budgetary constraints.
Sure.
But that would make things a lot more clear.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So could be
Yeah.
coming in
Yeah,
future.
it would also allow us to have someone who has oversight over the teaching, the quality of the teaching in the classroom. So just by visiting the classrooms, all the classrooms on a regular basis, but in providing input to both our own teaching artist and to the classroom music teacher, the oversight and ability to provide input in the actual classroom would be of benefit, and would show a good program oversight and good, strong teaching values throughout the year that will give the best result for the kids and for the program. So
Right.
we do need that. I mean, we would benefit from having more of that. So I agree with Brian. This would be a great.
Yes. And why should a business consider sponsoring a fine arts organization?
Mm.
Well, what I think happens when a business is associated with a fine arts organization like us is that a business kind of indicates they're in alignment with what that fine arts organization is representing. And to me, and this is something I've kind of learned along the way in this last 2.5 years, that what we're trying to do is build community, right? And a business that's sort of part and parcel with that can kind of see that too, that yes, we are a very niche organization, St. Louis Classical Guitar, and it might seem that we do something very, very, very specific, and we do, but really what we're trying to do is use a guitar as a vehicle to do really amazing, beautiful things community-wide, trying to build up education programs in schools and give students the idea that there are other ways to be, like our education programs are mainly focused in underserved communities. So we're exposing an art form to students that probably had no idea that it's even a thing, right?
Yeah.
That's just one example. We've got community guitar ensembles. We've got radio programs that broadcast to, the greater St. Louis area. We have, in addition to our concerts, we've got our education programs that we previously mentioned. We've got other ancillary education efforts. And I think when a business latches onto that, it's saying we're part of this community building, and it then, I think, sends a message of goodwill, like this is something we favor, not only the arts, but we see what the community impact is of this, and we as a business are in favor of it, and
Yes.
that ingratiates people to that business, I think, because then they see, okay, so this is a business that's supportive of such a thing, not only the arts, but all of this community building. And I think that creates a warmer feeling about that business within somebody that wants to A, work for them, or B, patronize that business. I think I think that's the appeal. I think.
Yes. Well, those are great points.
They can show themselves as good corporate citizens. We're using an art form, but we're doing it for the community and in the community.
Absolutely.
And with the community, it's all those things.
It's a vehicle for something bigger, and that's what I've come to learn. And I do think, if a business attaches itself to something like that, I would hope it creates, goodwill, good feelings about that business.
Absolutely.
We have a sponsorship program available, right? So contact us.
Yeah. I love that. But you both make great points, and I'm not shy to say it all, because for viewers, I was a sponsor, corporate business sponsor for St. Louis Classical Guitar, and I truly amazing. I mean, honestly, I love which I mentioned to you both, and I'll say again, I love what your organization's doing. Obviously, through my own background, and I'm very passionate about classical music and music in general, and I love the community building aspect, and specifically what St. Louis Classical Guitar is doing. So there were great benefits to Resume Makeover, my business, as being a sponsor, and I just think it's great. I think it's really important for businesses to support different causes, and that's one of the other beauties of nonprofits, and the kind of intersection between where corporate or for-profit organizations and nonprofits intersect is supporting a cause that you're passionate about, whether in my case with you guys, it's like music, or whether it's any other cause, nonprofit that you feel would really help. I think that's like super important to do, to build communities and to help others, and what you all are doing with the educational activities. And as Brian mentioned, giving access to classical guitar, to music, certain communities that likely wouldn't have had this access if it weren't for the type of programs you're doing, is so key. It's absolutely so key. So I and my business were proud to be involved with St. Louis Classical Guitar, and I think thank you for answering and giving input on that, because I think it is very important for people to know the benefits of course, there's financial benefits. You can do tax write-off as the corporate sponsor, but even benefits that are on a bigger scale, of helping others, of contributing to an art or a cause, even if it's not music, but a cause with a nonprofit that's really influencing and helping others. I think it's super important. So thanks.
The nonprofit exists because somebody feels passionate about it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
community building endeavor. I think that's sort of necessarily the case with nonprofits. So there's no shortage of us for sure. If businesses want to attach themselves to such efforts.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
I know we're wrapping up shortly, but
Yeah.
I would like to ask, I know we mentioned earlier the function and importance of teaching artists. Is St. Louis Classical Guitar currently hiring for teaching artists?
Yes. We are in a transitional period where a couple of our teaching artists are moving to far-flung areas away from St. Louis. So yeah, this summer is going to be a recalibration period for us in terms of teaching artists. So we're looking for a couple qualified guitar teaching artists that are trainable and would be willing to learn our curriculum and understand it. And yeah, we if this is reaching any ears that's like it's a fit, then I would love to speak to you.
And how can people get in touch with you, either apply or contact you directly? What's the best way?
So we've got contact info on our website, which is stlclassicalguitar.org. And there's my email address is listed on there, Hannah's is listed on there, and a general info at stlclassicalguitar.org email address is on there as well, all of which would eventually get to me. So yeah, but the website is the best place to go.
Awesome. So any potential prospective teaching artists or individuals out there that have interest in being a teaching artist with St. Louis Classical Guitar Society, you heard it from Brian. Go to the website, get in touch, and who knows, you may be their next teaching artist. So
yes, that would be wonderful.
Yes,
that's awesome. Is there anything more you all would like to add? It's been great having you both on. I just wanted to open the floor before we kind of bring things to a close.
I want to make sure that we acknowledge you as one of our sponsors for this last year. And let me thank you, Leslie, for doing that because it's been great to have you in our network here. And I know you appreciate what we do, and your support was very much appreciated as well. So thank you officially from us.
You're welcome. I'm
Yeah.
blushing over here, but no, it was really great. It has been great. I plan to continue in the future. You all do great work. And I mean, music is so important, I know, to us all. And as we talked about earlier, influences people in so many ways. So I'm glad through your organization, I'm able to, support that cause. And yeah, you guys are doing awesome things. You're welcome, and I'm happy to be a part of the SLCG, group. So
yeah, but yeah, I'll echo that and just say thank you once again. You were part of sponsoring our season-ending concert on Well Bar Waco.
Such a great artist, fantastic.
It was wonderful, wonderful. But that leads me to, like you said, is there anything else I'd like to add?
Yes.
That would be a shameless plug. We've got our 24-25 concert season.
Yeah.
So if you're in the St. Louis area, or even if you're out of the St. Louis area and want to come see some world-class classical guitar performances, we have subscriptions and single tickets now available again at our website.
Great. Yes, I echo that. Don't have to be in St. Louis because I'm my business. I have clients everywhere, but I'm based out of Miami, and so anyone that's enthusiastic, please. It was a great experience for me. I really can't say from the corporate sponsor angle. Great, mutually beneficial across the board, and so I highly recommend that for anyone who's considering sponsorship. Yes, and they're not paying me to plug, so this is truly authentic. So. Yes, great.
We are a nonprofit, so I don't know where that money will come from.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, it's been such a joy having you both on. I really very much appreciate it. I think this is also given great perspective for job seekers, especially in the nonprofit world. Again, you all are my first nonprofit guests, and it's really great to bring that perspective and viewpoint from a different kind of sector or area. So thanks
Yeah.
so much for giving input there. And yes, and thanks again to all our viewers and listeners out there, and stay tuned for the next episode of Ask the Hiring Manager. Bye, everyone.
Thank you
very
so much, Leslie. This was great. We enjoyed it. Thank you.
Great conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Welcome to Ask the Hiring Manager. I'm Leslie Hunter, president of Resume Makeover. I've been helping job seekers for nearly a decade to acquire their dream jobs and achieve the income they desire, from entry-level applicants to C-suite executives and everyone in between. From your resume to your cover letter, LinkedIn profile, bio, or website content, I'm here for you. And now I'm going to open the door and interview some of the top hiring managers so that you can have the insight that you need to book the jobs that you want. Welcome to Ask the Hiring Manager.